just shortly introduce myself because Chris actually mentioned most of them, right? But I think one part which is missing is next to my legal and business background, the whole journey that actually led me to the co-founding topic was my own startup failure. So I had two startup experiences. One was a reasonable success when the founder left, I took over the company, scaled it, and exited it 2 years later. And the other one was a total failure, where I had two co-founders, which were my close friends and ex-colleagues, and it completely blew up. We're still friends. It took us a few years to actually get over it, but we are still friends. But that was about 10 years ago, and there was a big moment for my questioning, like, okay, with all my background and experience, like, how come I/we didn't get this right? That's when I started to do a lot of research, and I started to talk to a lot of founders, because back in the days I was organizing a lot of startup co-founder events, started to talk to a lot of investors and realize how big of topic it actually is for founders, right? From the question that we are going to focus on today on how to find the right co-founder, to how do you structure the team, to how do you actually allocate the equity, and what other framework agreements do you want to have around your cap table and equity allocation, up to the co-founder agreement, right? We're speaking here about mixture of legal, business, psychology topics. So anyway, that was my moment of reckoning. And when I did a lot of research, I actually realized there is so little, close to nothing about the topic, that I realized I might as well try to fill the gap. 10 years ago, I wrote a book about the topic, and I pretty much since then worked exclusively with founders, investors, universities, spin-off offices, and I'm really happy to see that over the years, the whole attention to the topic is rising. Here are some of the qualifications. You can always find more about me before. So let's move. How to find the right co-founder, right? I think it's a question I find in my mailbox or during my workshops about a dozen times every single week. And I always say it's $1 million question. It's the same question, like, if you ask, how do you find the right life partner, right? There are no simple answers, right? So I'm sorry to disappoint you. It's not a magic formula that I'll give you in this workshop and, off you go. However, there are few, guidances, things to think about, things to try, and things to consider when you are looking for the co-founder. And that is something that we will actually talk about. So we will look on 5 main topics: why to look for a co-founder, what does the right co-founder look like, where to look for one, when to look for one, and typical pitfalls. Getting started, why to look for a co-founder. And sometimes I just go by asking questions, but sometimes we have a little quiz. So the time for a little quiz and warm-up is here. So from today's top 10 most valuable companies measured by market capitalization, how many percentage-wise do you think is co-founded versus solo-founded? Please don't type it in the chat, just unmute and shout. Or the brave ones?
I'd say 100% co-founded.
Tom, not bad, not quite there, but not bad. Yeah. Anybody else would like to try? Diksha, did I hear you? No?
Yeah.
50%. 80%.
80%. I think, okay, Mark is the winner of our small contest, the closest. It's about 7-2, because this year is the first one where we actually have Visa there. And as the founder of Visa is Bank of America, I'm not quite including it in the list. But I followed that list for the last 8 years, and it was always 80-20 or 70-30, right? So the simple answer is majority, right? So it doesn't mean that if you are a solo founder, you can never build an amazing unicorn company, but statistically, chances are probably higher to do something like that if you have the right co-founders, right? So what are the benefits? Why do you guys actually think about having co-founders?
So we can answer, right? Okay.
Yes, please. Exactly like that. You unmute and you say, yes,
Yeah.
awesome.
To bring the skills we don't have.
Right? Excellent. What else?
To not be very lonely in this journey. I know it's more emotional answer, but yes, I think it can be very alone to be like a founder. So
Diksha, absolutely not to be underestimated, right? Because being an entrepreneur is one of the most, I think, one of the most fulfilling, but also one of the most challenging career choices out there. Building a business from idea to, revenue stage takes extreme perseverance. And if you get the right people and you can combine it and combine the motivation, it's definitely not to be underestimated. There is one more point for those of you who are looking for external fundraising. Who can think of one? Tom is smiling knowingly.
Okay, I guess at times it might be the prerequisite that you need co-founders.
Right.
For example, I've been applying for accelerator programs, and one of the prerequisites is I need another co-founder. So yeah.
Absolutely. Saurabh, do I say your name correctly? Saurabh?
Yes, you nailed it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for absolutely. It's sometimes a prerequisite for joining a lot of programs, and it also is a preference of investors, right? Now, why is it preference of investors to have co-founding teams compared to solo founders? All the reasons we mentioned before, plus diversification of risk, right? I mean, if something happens to you and you are the solo founder, like the chances of replacing or carrying on with the business is just very small. But also because teams typically, because it takes so much skills and knowledge and resources, psychological, physical, it's actually usually really teams who can move faster. And this is a perspective, you guys are based all over the place, right? But in Switzerland, Swiss ICT Investors Club is the biggest angel investment platform in tech startups, right? And the president, I think, and he once summed it up really beautifully at the panel. And for many VCs, it's actually just experienced VCs, I'd like to point out, is the same thing. It's actually the team that they are investing in, right? And I love the way he summed it up, that great team will figure out how to make a mediocre idea fly, while the mediocre team can kill even the best idea, right? So investors it's something that they look at as well. So if you need fundraising at some point, putting the right thing together is not only important for the business, but also to be able to access funds. However, we just now look at the sunny side. It's fantastic. It's great to have co-founders. It's great to have the right co-founders. But in reality, my experience was not, unfortunately, a very rare experience. There is a great research for those of you who like the numbers and details behind, there is a great research Professor Noam Wasserman, back then was Harvard Business School professor. And he followed, I believe it was over 10,000 startups over 10 years. So, okay, it's a West Coast, it's a US market. But his findings were that up to 66% of startup failures is somehow linked to the co-founding team, right? And this is something which is very often corroborated by both serial entrepreneurs and VCs, right? Some VCs even tell me that they would even say that it's higher. So we have this huge elephant in the room where it comes to, co-founding is great, but how do you do it right? Well, there are ways how to do it right, but you definitely don't want to do it wrong because the cost of that is just very high. So if we look on what does the right co-founder look like? Do you guys have an idea? Who knows what the right co-founder looks like for you already? Anthony, fantastic. So you already have one. Are you still looking for an additional one or?
Okay, so I think the ideal person should not necessarily be exactly like you.
Hmm?
So it should have maybe some different personality or different motivations, something, but there should be some similarity in some shape, I guess.
Right, you kind of don't want to have another you, which might be difficult to get anyway, but you don't want to have another you on your team. Absolutely, right? So if we look on the things to watch for, one thing is your point is a little bit of the compatibility of, could be skills, it could be networks, it could be attitudes, but compatibility of something that you need. What I always say it's important is to look beyond the qualifications and also look what is potentially the co-founder bringing, right? So the good place to start on defining what does the right co-founder for you to look like, it's to actually start from your business at the moment, right? Because I don't know, depending on which stage you are, you might pivot, it might change, but where you are at the moment, and I don't know if you guys did, but most of founders at some shape and form will do some type of business model canvas or business plan, where you are listing the key resources that you actually need to build a business. And a great way to think of your co-founding team is to think, okay, from those resources, which ones do I have? And which ones do I not have? And is a co-founder a potential good source of these resources, right? To just help you to get started on what is it that you are actually looking for, right? In terms of skills, in terms of capital that they bring, in terms of experience as well. What is also useful, once you start there and you know that, to go a little bit deeper, right? I met few founders who actually told me that they spend more time obsessing about who their first hires were than who were their co-founders, right? Again, I always say these extreme examples to just bring the point home. I'm sure none of you will be one of those, but it just does take, you know, a good time and thinking, what is it actually that you are looking for? And look beyond the typical things like skills, experience, and main tasks, right? What else would you kind of, in terms of assessing the compatibility or the fit to your team, what else would you add to this list? Speaking? Yeah, please repeat.
I have an idea, and I'm sorry, I really cannot share my webcam at the moment.
Please share.
I was thinking that as in every relationship, the basis is in common values, regardless of compatibilities with personalities and so on. We should have a matching set of values because from those you derive your vision and the mission for whatever you're building. And then you can work on personality and skills and whatever else is needed there.
Absolutely. Andrea, you hit the nail on the head, because when usually behind, like, you first find it on the operational level, right? Like, why can't you agree? What is it that you are building? But somewhere down the line is either a values misalignment or uncharacteristic split, right? So the values is something that you can check. And I think it doesn't necessarily need to be 100% matching, but you need to make sure that the values are not contradicting. And then there is sufficient agreement on the values for the company, which then, you know, translates into the mission and vision. So that's definitely true. Other things I would add is assets. Do you actually look for the co-founder to bring assets? And always when I say that, there are some people who tell me like, Jana, are you from the moon? Do you not know how difficult it is to actually look for co-founders? Do you really want to add, like, you know, depends where your business is at, right? Do you already have something which is developed, you have prototype, or are you looking in the idea stage? So you need to, of course, be reasonable to judge where your business is. But if you are actually, you know, already at some part of the road, asking for a buying payment, especially, I mean, it needs to be linked to the equity compensation, but it's not completely unrealistic or, you know, crazy. Another super important thing is the required commitment, right? Because in the beginning, there is a huge enthusiasm, but if you are actually speaking to a co-founder, what is it that you need at the minimum? What is it that you might need over time? And to have this initial check, if that is even, you know, open for conversation, because a lot of people like to, you know, join projects or, you know, have their fingers in different pies. But if you ask them, what are the conditions that you would be actually willing to join the business full time? It's a different question, but it's definitely a useful question to ask when you are considering actually getting a co-founder on. attitude, values, milestone, responsibility. Do you think there is a magic number of co-founders, right? Like that, you know, what is the right number?
3.
3.
2.
Great.
What do you say, Mark?
I'm going with 3 as well. 3 to 5.
3 to 5. Well, yeah, Diksha?
Yeah.
It's a typical range, right? 3 to 5 recommended. However, I would very much like to ask you, please do not, there is like the advice that actually exists in this field, a lot of it is like one type advice, right? 3 or 5 or, you know, equal splits or whatever. There is no magic number. It depends very much the type of business you are building in, depends the industry you are in, depends the expertise you are needing. I've seen amazing startups with 2, and I've seen also great startups with, I think above 5, the complexity is just much bigger, right? So you need to be aware of it because it's not only managing the cap table, but it's also the roles, how the team functions, decision making. So with every additional co-founder, the complexity does go up. So you don't want to get the co-founders just, you know, to hit a magic number. But I've seen very different numbers work. The ones that really don't work then is if you really go overboard, which are some founders who try to experiment with different things. And I think my highest record was actually, Chris, it was a startup in Berlin who had 86 co-founders, was the record that I've ever came across. But yeah, so 3 to 5 is the typical, but I mean, if you feel for your business is right, something outside of this range, it might very well be the case as well. Another question I have for you is, how important is diversity? Or why would you consider having a diverse community? And please, here I don't speak about any fashionable, letter of alphabets, or I just really speak what is the diversity in terms of backgrounds, culture, expertise that you should be looking at? Anthony?
Yeah, talking about diversity, I think it's very important, right? So it offers opportunity to give insights like that are not peculiar to just one side. And variety is a spice, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think the right answer for your particular co-founding team in terms of, you know, what is the diversity you should be aiming for is that it's very individual. And I would say it depends a little bit on what is the innovation that what is the degree of innovation you are striving for. Because if I'm opening a bakery on the corner and I pretty much want to, and I know these are not the type of businesses you guys are in, but I pretty much just want to replicate a proven business model and, you know, in a proven target market, I don't really need a lot of diversity. I need to, I need to understand my target market in that area and location, but I don't need a lot of diversity. But if you are building innovative solutions, new industries, there typically, the more diverse you go, the more innovation potential, not always realized, but the more innovation potential you might have. What is difficult though, if not managed well, that diversity is like disproportionate to the speed of decision making, right? Because the more diverse backgrounds and opinions you sometimes bring, the more sometimes you need time to actually come to, depends also like what is the culture of the company, what is the decision making, but how do you actually reach that consensus or to go forward, right? So the right answer is individual, and it depends what is it that your business needs. One more question I would like to ask you is, what do you think co-founders should be bringing? So we are now past the stage when we said, okay, we have a skill fit, values fit, you know, what else would you like a co-founder to bring?
Honesty.
Honest, but yeah, kind of the personal characteristics that, you know, yeah, I would put there a little bit in the around the values, integrity, absolutely, right? Transparency, trust, all these like soft sounding words, which actually matter a lot when you get down to doing a business. Anything else?
So this is like besides the skills, values, and resources, what should they bring? I think optimism, because that's very necessary to be a founder, and like a compulsive, optimistic behavior. I think many founding teams lack that.
I think, yeah, I think around that category, Diksha, absolutely the whole perseverance of the and solution finding, right? Because I sometimes simplify and I categorize people into problem finders or solution finders. And I think if you want to go down on the entrepreneurial journey, you better be a solution finder. But I would add two/3 more elements where please always use them as a check when you are thinking, okay, you are finding potential candidates for co-founders. One is a clear commitment, right? And that be specific, right? Like, am I speaking 3 hours a week? Am I speaking 3 months? What am I actually bringing, right? Very specifically. If you start to work with me and I start to work with you, what is it that we are jointly committing to? Second one, that is relevant already when you are sure you have the right person, but I'm super strong candidate of skin in the game. What is skin in the game? Because it looks like an easy question, but sometimes not. So yeah, Diksha, please.
Experience, like they have done this before, I don't know, or they know the industry, they know the sector, they know what they're talking about.
No, that would
I would say,
yeah, Mark.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I would say they
I was
have
thinking
something to
about
lose.
more. Oh, sorry.
Yes, say again, Hira.
Yeah, I would say they have something to lose. Like if they have
Absolutely. Now we are moving, like it's getting warmer. And if they have something to lose, like what do we think it's like kind of enough to motivate or to feel? Like if I just work full time for free or for sweat equity, is that sufficient? Skin in the game. What do you think?
Equity?
Well, if I work for equity and I just, I didn't put anything else but my time, right? And I hope I'm a super valuable resource, so my time is very valuable. The only thing I put on the table is my free time. Is that enough?
No.
Right. Look, again, individual people see this differently. I would strongly recommend to add there the cash component, right? And founders come from different, and projects come from different cash needs in the beginning. Founders come from different, life stages, backgrounds, countries. Like sometimes when I shared what is the investors' expectations on founders investing in startups in Switzerland, it's completely unrealistic for most rest of the world, right? So it really depends. But at least proportionately, right? If I'm in my 50s and I'm after my third, successful exit, and I choose as my co-founder a recent PhD graduate from the top university because he has the technical expertise, we probably will have, you never know, but we probably will have a different capacity to invest simply because we are in a different life stages. Nevertheless, both of us should be able to invest something, right? And I cannot explain you the psychology behind like why it is, but we see incredible difference in terms of, giving up or, moving on or engagement if there is actually a cash that you put on the table. So for the co-founders, I would always advise like, what are the arrangements that you can find that everybody is going to invest something, right? And then the third thing, hopefully you are only getting a co-founder that brings essential resources, right? Here I'm a little bit diverting to, how to find the right co-founder, but hopefully we are away from the times, even though I still see a lot of that advice around, right? Like we just need an advisor, you just need a lawyer to incorporate your company, please give out some of the equity, right? I would be extremely careful with, you know, one-time gigs that you just need to have once and then not, because your equity in the beginning might seem cheap, but it's the very finite resource, it's the most valuable resource you have. And only somebody who really brings essential things, and there is more of a long-term perspective, I would say, right? So depends, but yeah, I would say something essential. Now, now we know why to look for the co-founder. What does the co-founder look like? Now, where to look for a co-founder? Where did you guys look so far?
Colleagues,
Sorry, Hira, say again.
colleagues, like where you work.
Colleagues, absolutely, yeah. Elsewhere?
Clients can make great co-founders.
Tom, don't have those on the list. Brilliant, yes, absolutely. It's actually not the first time that was successful thing. Yeah, clients as well. Where else?
Events, like conferences, because those people are interested in same topics as us. So
Right. Absolutely. Like I like the professional sounding of this group. Very frequent co-founder sources are friends and family. Now, I would not discount them by any means, because there are huge advantages like pre-existing trust and stuff like that. However, statistically, these are more risky categories of founders that you can choose. And there are numerous reasons. There is usually a lack of proper due diligence. Like if I'm your, if I'm your wife, if I'm your best friend, you're likely to do less of the due diligence, how really the best person for the role of the startup I am, than if I'm a complete stranger. So that is one reason. And second reason is sometimes the pre-existing social relationship is preventing the effective business relationship, right? Because you will just not say it because, you know, you don't want to hurt them, or it's really difficult to fire you the company, you know, or so it has additional complexities. There are great examples of family and friend startups, but I think it was Rockefeller who said it, that you better make friends from your business partner, that's business partners from your friends, right? So just be, yeah. Do you agree?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the moment you mentioned that, it just got stuff in my head, because I had a very personal example of that problem, yeah, with a friend. So I thought it was going to be a walk in the park to have a friend as a co-founder. And when it happened, I recognized, oh, exactly, this is a bad idea. So I told a friend, I think it's most appropriate if we are friends than business persons. Because we're much better that way as friends. Yeah, so it works.
Thank you for sharing. It always helps to hear it from others. So I would not completely discount it, but I would say if you are considering co-founders from these two categories, do same due diligence, if not more than when you do with complete strangers. Have extremely clear agreements on commitment, performance, expectations, and also what are you going to do if things don't work out, right? Like try to build the Chinese wall and protected relationship, and also test it, right? Like see, okay, we need to see if we actually function, so maybe don't overcommit before you tested it. Classmate, ex-colleagues, a great category here. The reason is that you've seen that people like you pretty much are potentially in a good position to judge their professional capabilities. The exclamation mark that I have here is watch out for context, because sometimes skills are transferable and sometimes they are not, right? And when you are speaking about early stage companies and businesses, next to the specialist role you sometimes want people for, you need to have a generalist dimension as well, because in the early stage you end up doing a lot of things and cross, and you know, next to your technical expertise, at some point you might need to hire a team, grow a team, so you might need to have additional skills and attitudes, right? I mean, in Switzerland, what we see is a lot of transfers from, you know, industry and academia into the startup world. Now, it happens that it's successful, but it also very often happens that it's not, right? Because being a researcher in the lab or being an employee in, you know, 100,000 employee company, it's just a very different context. It's very different level of risk. It's very different level of uncertainty. It's very different level of speed, right? So when you are having, you know, thinking of co-founders from your classmates and colleagues, just make sure that you test a little bit for these respective levels. Yeah. Then we have hackathons and similar, right? Startup weekends, great. You meet people, you date them, you get a little bit of an insight. I would say for these, just make sure that you have afterwards the conversations. And I don't know, Chris, I actually didn't think of including the whole topic of remoteness and stuff like that. So again, during COVID, that absolutely exploded. One of the things I do is also like co-founder mediation. So to help founders if they really can't find the solutions between themselves. And sometimes I get requests, okay, I need you to help me with, you know, co-founder mediation, but I've never met my co-founder. I don't even know what he looks like, and I have no idea where he lives, right? That was, I would say, if that is the situation, Chris, that I know, I would love to hear maybe more in detail sometimes your journey, then it's not a good idea. Because I'm a strong believer that you can actually build trust and commitment and joint vision and motivation also remotely. But I think it's actually a little bit harder than in person. So you need to be a little bit more diligent and structured about it, right? And so it always needs to be followed by what I call the co-founder dating period, when you actually go a little bit more in depth into, you know, are we actually the right fit? Social professional networks, absolutely. I think Diksha already mentioned that as well. Skillshare startup platforms, networking events, headhunters. It's relatively new. And I think who's from UK? There was somebody who was joining from London. Maybe I can't see the raise of hands. Oh, Mark, it was you. So I think
It
it's
was just unmuting.
sorry, it was UK who is actually pioneering in trying to run some of these services, like actually doing executive search for co-founders, for founders. It's the 12 Ronnie's platform that were doing it. They were doing it for, you know, I think it was a pilot last year. I'm not sure how far they moved, but it was very, I thought it was very innovative. Chris, please.
Yeah, I have a question, because we were discussing this. Would you support that a KYC for remote co-founders? So we were discussing of integrating this into the platform, that people obviously have to identify themselves before sort of signing a contract. Would you support that, or would you say this is not necessary?
I would say it depends at which stage. I would say maybe you first kind of want to confirm other things, so maybe I wouldn't start with that. But at the point when you would actually consider seriously cooperating, I probably would. Yeah. So it's question of timing and question of depth, right? Like what, you know, the other day I got somebody asked me for a phone bill contract so I could order shoes on the platform for kids, right? So it's like, yeah, sorry, completely inappropriate, and why would I? But if you tell me, well, Jana, I would actually like to know if you really exist in a real life, because we are thinking of starting a project together. And if you come, because there is a cost, right? Kind of engage people, onboard people, and then they disappear. There is a cost. There might be the unclarity about the IP as well. Is right, because if I kind of contributed and then I disappear and you cannot find me, and then I reappear 2 years later after you raised successful A series, now claim part IP ownership, I would think that at some point it's actually a great idea to do that. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Headhunters, we talked about it, Mark, available mainly for you. I think they do also across, you know, like not only focusing on UK, but I think their biggest outreach is in UK. And serendipity, which, you know, I'll talk a little bit about, but in the beginning, talk to as many people as you possibly can. One very successful co-founding team, they met in the airport lobby, right? Just chatting over what are you working on, and, you know, great, still successful, happy together, right? I always sometimes think when I hear it myself, I'm speaking like a dating platform, but you know, in the end, the successful co-foundership is a lot of you know, just a relationship that works. So general guidance, I would say always try to also look beyond your immediate networks, because there is benefits to the trust, but there is also, I mean, even though you might be an extroverted socialite and, you know, you only know a limited amount of people. Sometimes the second, third degrees networks or trusted platforms like Tsunami can be actually extremely useful, right? Because there is some type of peer review already, and always try to get the best person possible for the job, right? Because the success of your business does depend a lot on, you know, how great people you actually attracted to build that business with you. Now, when to look for a co-founder? There is no also like one size fits all answer. It's extremely individual. I would say that the earlier you start looking for the co-founder, the hardest it is, because the more you have tangible project, something developed, the easier it is to actually get people engaged or attracted. So it depends a little bit what your business needs. Do you actually really need a CTO already in this stage, or can you outsource it? And I mean, and I don't know your backgrounds, right? But I would assume you are also coming from a little bit more of the technical corner. Not underestimate to bring the commercial founders early on, because that's what I see. It's often a timing mistake, that technical founders just develop the product or service and they love to do it and they are so immersed in it, and there's actually nobody who talks to the market, nobody who talks to the customers in a structured way to provide the whole UX testing. So bringing on the commercial people, because they are only needed later, right? Like you don't need a co-founder who can sell the product before you have developed the product. But if you only get him once you have the product developed, it might be too late, right? So getting the completeness of the team in terms of the commercial capability relatively earlier than typically technical founders think. Anthony, you are giving me a grin. Is that on somebody else, or is that like you don't agree, or you know, would you like to say something? See, this is the benefit when I see you.
Yeah, it's okay. I was just trying to rationalize it. Yeah, but yeah.
Do you feel some resistance? Do you feel like, why would I have the, you know, commercial people on?
I mean, I think it's okay on the one hand, but sometimes it could just make the process more cumbersome, I thought.
In what way? Cumbersome?
Say for instance, because like there was this person who asked the question, and I thought to also ask about it too, because if a person has their own perception of, say, the journey, and they think maybe going to another networking session and meeting some person who doesn't really care about the idea. How can you think of remote persons and their trust worthiness? I was just trying to rationalize that part.
Yeah. Well, back to the remote thing, and sorry, I thought it was more on the commercial side. I think back to the remote thing, it really, you need to be a little bit more detailed in the dating, that I would say, than even more than when you do it in person, right? But I think it's possible. There is a great, if you want a Speed of Trust, it's the son of Stephen Covey. And, you know, it's coming from, you know, how do you actually build trust? Can you accelerate it? And there is one of the strong myths. And I think, I don't know whether it's typical for UK, but I once worked with a founder from UK who told me, Jana, flowers and unicorns, 25 years and I'll trust you, right? So I don't know, right? I mean, but if you, there are things you can actually do structurally to accelerate it, because especially in the remote context, it's absolutely needed, and other arrangements around it. Yeah. And what are the typical pitfalls? So I think the main one I get as a mistake is, please do not get married on the first date, right? I mean, there are very few of us who would actually consider doing something like that in our personal lives. I think the same should be for the business setting, right? Because I often see it, hackathons, kind of handshakes, 50-50, the whole type of how you actually, assess, is this the right person? What do we actually need to speak first about before we even get to some, equity indication conversations, right? The whole commitment, the contributions, all that stuff. Just be very transparent in a sense of, Diksha, I really have a good feeling. I would love if you join the project that I'm working on as a potential co-founder. This is the role that I'm thinking you could be playing. But is it possible that it would actually start working first and test it? And if we both feel it's the right fit, then we have, further conversations, right? So be a little bit diligent, but also managing the expectations on when you start talking to potential co-founders, right? So that would be one. And second, just really date, right? Structurally, there are a few tools that I would actually like to introduce to you. In the beginning, interviews, references, again, the same, especially if you are doing second, third degree network, right? With who did the people work before? What did they achieve, right? What did the people that they work with think about them, right? It's like co-founder select, like if you get, if your business is successful, you're likely to spend more time with your co-founder than with your spouses, right? Depends. But what I'm saying, it's a choice that you definitely want to make quite diligently. Then there are tools like team assessments that you can actually run. There is a lot of individual one-on-ones. My favorite one, and I don't have any commercial affiliation with them, is called Leading Brains, which is a neuroscientist who started to do team assessments. And the main difference is that most individual team assessments actually tell you how is Chris, how is Jana, and how is Diksha. But this one gives you the amalgamated team personality, right? What are our blind spot risks? Where are our frictions risks? So it assesses us as a team. So that has quite a nice added value. And structured dating, right? I recommend a co-founder worksheet, which I developed. It has a set of questions. Individually, each founder fills it out, and then you speak about it and align. You actually spend some time going through this. Also super useful in that remote setting to actually assess, okay, is that the right fit? And trial period. If you can, always have a trial period, right? Just say, okay, let's work on this piece for 3 weeks and see, am I keeping my word? Am I delivering? Am I available when I told you I'm available, right? What is the quality of my input and delivery? Things like that. Last thing, how much to share with others? And sometimes I hear that question. 9 out of 10 times this question will come from a first-time founder, right? Yeah, but if I tell them my idea, what if they steal it, run away with it, do it themselves? I can't promise you that it will never happen. I can tell you in reality, and what a lot of serial entrepreneurs and VCs will tell you, that the world is full of great ideas, but not of great execution, right? So very often you get valuable input when you are speaking about your ideas, questions, what is not clear, right? Like, but in general, use common sense. Like, I mean, if I'm in a biotech, I'm not gonna be, on networking events, I'm not gonna be sharing the formula for my, cure for cancer. But if I'm talking about, starting a bicycle platform sharing, or things like that, use common sense, but little bit the fear that this might happen is relatively seldom, unless you share it with your direct competitor and they don't have it yet and they are already executing. It's less likely than some of the especially first-time founders might think. If you ask me about the whole NDA, should I do an NDA? I would say for any stage of business, it is not bad to have a good NDA template in your pocket. But please be very careful how you use it. I once talked to a VC who told me that when he gets an email from a startup, first ask them to sign an NDA, and then they will share the pitch deck. He immediately deletes it, right? Do not overuse it in a sense of find out where you feel comfortable sharing your idea, that it's also clear enough to whoever you are sharing it, without having to sign an NDA every time you actually want to tell me what are you working on. And secondly, second point on the whole NDA business, NDA itself does not protect you, right? Just because I signed the NDA with Chris does not mean that if he now goes and tells Diksha about my super secret idea, I'm automatically protected, because what it means, I need to throw resources on enforcing the NDA, and typically NDAs are very difficult when it comes to enforceability, because what is idea, what is publicly known, there is a lot of unclear legal concepts being used, so it's not so straightforward. So it's not also a golden bullet that would always protect you. Typical 3 mistakes: getting cheerleaders instead of co-founders, not clarifying commitment and contributions, and getting the wrong co-founder, the main one. I apologize because I left relatively small time for your questions, but I do hope we answered some as we did. And now, please, for whichever are left, shoot. Anthony.
Mm-hmm. So sorry. So in 3 slides away, 3 slides ago, I think you pointed on yeah, 3 slides backwards, I think. I don't know. Yeah. That where you have interview, selection. Yeah, this is it. So we understand that it's very usually it's very hard to find the right co-founder. That's the essence of the session. But then when you have to do this, which seems okay, it then seems like a regular recruitment process, like hiring a staff or a worker or something. So if the person finds or understands that they've been interviewed or something, I think this relates to me. Usually when the prospective co-founder begins to give reasons why they don't want to be co-founders or something, or negative reasons, like it's worrisome. So I'm wondering to what extent we can try to use interviews, references, and this method, which seems like the regular recruitment method.
Okay.
To what extent?
Great question. If I understand correctly, I would actually say you need to go deeper than the regular recruitment. You actually need to go more deep, much more deeper. You need to ask much more even personal questions, and so it's even more detailed if this is done correctly. But I think a lot comes, Anthony, with managing the expectations and explaining the objectives, right? Because I wouldn't just start interviewing people without giving the context. I would just say, look, this is a strategic decision for both you and me, because it includes both of us giving, considerable amount of our time, effort, and commitment to this project. And I would like both of us be sure that we are the right match. And here is the process that I would suggest for us to do. And you don't make it only one-sided, because the structured dating, the co-founder workshop, team assessment, this is something that everybody participates, trial period, right? So you don't have there the hierarchical relationship, like, I decide whether you will be hired and not. Both of us decide whether we are right fit for that. And the main intention behind it, you just want to protect the time of all participants and protect the business. Because if you choose the wrong person and then you invest time and then you need to, separate, and is there already equity involved? Is it not? It just gets extremely messy, and it's just waste of everybody's time. So it's setting the intention and the context behind this. Yeah. Good. More questions?
Sorry, Anna, just an extension to that. That's super cool and interesting, in an area I'm personally really interested in. This HBF for startups and co-founder worksheet you had there on the screen, are those, I think the second one at least is a resource on your website is it that you recommend?
Yeah, the co-founder worksheet is freely available. You can just go there, download it. The HBF, do I have the, I think I put their link in my resource section as well. It's relatively hidden because they decided to main focus on education and teaching teams, but you can still find it and do it there. And I think the costs are about 50, for the base report is about $50.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have also a question. So in case we match with the wrong co-founder, what's the flow to deal with, like separating us from the idea?
So it depends very much what is the framework that you have around it. Do you have a co-founder agreement? Do you have a good bad leaver framework? Do you have vesting schedule in case you already allocated equity? So it depends a lot on in which stage you are and how solid was your basis. So it's difficult to answer without knowing more details. If you want, we can always schedule an individual session where we can actually go through it. You can tell me more in detail and we can speak about what options you are. But yeah, the range is hugely different depending on, is that a friendly divorce? Is that, you know, and all those things.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one question. First of all, thank you so much for your insightful inputs, Jana. And just very quickly, since I'm in a pre-stage round, we have come up with an MVP, and then now I'm trying to find out a couple of other co-founders. And my question relates to one of your previous points that you mentioned about NDA. I know you mentioned you should not overuse it, but at the same time, if you're giving some context to the potential co-founders, where do you draw the line, or where do you think, okay, I should not share the technical aspects of my product?
How much proprietary IP is involved, Sarah? That's where I would draw.
Not that much. In fact, most of it is open source, and a few of it is just our contribution.
Yeah, then I would be quite open, right? Because I mean, you want them to assess the technical potential. Is there a potential so again, like it depends a little bit where is your comfort level as well, right? But if it's not a proprietary IP that if you disclose that you might lose the patentability, or it's really like result of 10 years lab research and a specific component, I would feel comfortable to be quite open about.
Got it. Thanks.
Thank you.
I have a question. Yeah, so once you found a co-founder, my question is, how do you decide who becomes the face of the company, who's the CEO, who becomes the face of the company, represents the company in the news and the media, etc.?
The best person for the role, Nita. Well, look, I mean, CEO has typical CEO would have certain responsibilities, right? From fundraising to overall leadership of the company to external representation, right? So who is actually the person who can do this in terms of qualifications, personality within the team? Who is the person the best?
Mm-hmm.
And also test it first without being attached to the titles. In the early stages, right? Like there are so many successful startups that after 6 months, they would actually say, look, let's just swap. I'm not, you know, and the co-founders would, so don't get attached to, you know, doing a forever decision, because if you find out that it's actually, you know, it comes with really sitting as a team, defining the key responsibilities, and looking at the team, who from the current team is the best possible person to do that role, and also has an appetite to do the role. And also having, especially in the early stages, having a relatively small feedback loops, short feedback loops, excuse me. So you do every 3 months, how am I performing? Do I feel I'm right fit for the role? Does the team fit I'm the right fit for the role? Or do we need to swap or adjust the role, right? So it needs to have like egos out of the room, definitely, for conversations like that. And what is in the best interest of the company?
All right, thank you.
Chris.
What do you think? Like, I mean, we are supporting hackathons here, and we also have a tool to sort of strike an agreement on chain about the ownership of the project. What do you think is, on average, a good timing to sort of, look into such an agreement that you talk about ownership, IP, about a project in a good case? Let's say, people meet, they're doing a hackathon, and should they immediately discuss, the ownership, or at least if they have an equal share or not, or should they discuss after 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks after, talking to each other and working with each other? What is your suggestion or recommendation?
Another great question, Chris. Not too early, not too late. $1 million answer, right? No. What is too early? Too early is we just met. I don't even know whether we are the right fit to be. So I would not do it at the beginning of the hackathon. Maybe, and I actually not sure if hackathons have that legal perspective insured, because here is me putting the legal hat on again. I would just protect, and I would say that whatever is developed by the participants during that hackathon is not going to be claimed as a proprietary ownership of any of the individual, or we need to see. But there is maybe a place for the hackathon to ensure the basic kind of safety environment. But then there is like after the hackathon, so we work together during the hackathon, we find, okay, this is the right fit, you seem to have the skills. Stages, I will do a framework agreement, right? And what I developed for founders, this is a 2-page document. Don't spend 10,000 on lawyers and write 40 pages. This is a 2-page document, but in writing, we summarize, okay, Jana and Chris are going to try working together for the next 6 weeks. These are the main deliverables. The intention is to see if we are fit. You put there confidentiality, you put there protection of the IP, which are the most important things, but you also put there a rough agreement, like if we decide to join, right? How will we evaluate the contribution and equity? Because you can agree, is it gonna be historical? Are we gonna look at the contributions? I would at this stage not talk about numbers. I would definitely clarify if there are certain assumptions, because what often happens in this stage, you invite me to participate in Tsunami. I think, oh, fantastic, I'm getting 50% share. And you think you already developed Tsunami so far, you are thinking about offering 3 to 5%, right? So if there is this huge gap between, I would make sure that that does not exist. So, if you have an idea, indicate possibilities, but in this stage it's still too early. And I talk about it for all of you who would like to see more details in the book of the 7 steps of co-founding the right way. It's a structured process. So until we know I'm joining, until we know what is my commitment, until we spoke roughly about the roles and availability and all these things, I think it's too early to speak about equity. Because depends, if you just feel like, equal is fine, doesn't matter who does what, it's okay. But if you feel, which most of European founders feel, it should be somewhat proportionate to the contributions, it's too early. But if in this stage, after the hackathon, for the first 3 months, you sign the framework agreement, you are transparent, you are protecting the founders, you are protecting the business. And if you decide, okay, we dated successfully, we would like the relationship to the next stage, then you go a little bit more in detail and you sign the co-founder agreement, which again, it's not 40 pages, it's 10 pages, right? But there you already spell things a little bit more in detail. And then, of course, when you incorporate, you have the shareholder agreement, right? But I would always say, try to aim on good enough level of legal protection. And that's keeping in mind that startups have limited resources, limited time, limited appetite, right, to do with these things. There are minimum things that you can actually put in place. And Sarah, I don't know specifics of your situation and question, to actually protect you in cases that you need to separate on the way, right? Thank you for the question.
Thank you for the answer, definitely. I mean, I think we already over time, so yeah. I don't want to stress everybody's calendar too much here. I want to say thank you very much, Jana, for holding this very, very interesting session. I hope that you will be very close to the whole tsunami ecosystem in the future, and when we will try to keep you very close, definitely. In general, we will, say launch another beta version of our tooling probably this week, beginning of next week, right before the cohort 1. So it will include, an automated business plan writer. It will include some name and logo suggestion for your project, because we said we want to really start at the very beginning of each project. If you don't have a name, a project doesn't give you the emotional touch that people need to, develop it further. So that's why we started with a name and a logo. Obviously, everybody can come up with one themselves, but we wanted to really cover every single step, and we will build it out, and it will be, hopefully we get feedback from every one of you. Love to see you all in the next sessions for the cohort. We will have an extra speed dating, I guess. Diksha will invite everyone. We will have a speed dating on a platform called AirMeet, where we can invite everyone who doesn't have a partner or a teammate yet for the hackathon, but you will find that later in your inbox. So thanks a lot, everyone. Thank you, Jana, again. That's her book. Have a look at it, buy it, and read it, and then you will all be successful team builders. Have a good day. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.